Hello, everyone. I am Charlton-Trujillo. I am a Mexican American Latinx YA middle grade picture book author, filmmaker, and youth literacy activist. I am also the author of several award winning books, including the ANGIE series, and I am here today to celebrate these wonderful authors. Now, before we jump in and get going, because there's a lot to share, I want to just take a moment and ask you to look over at our chat box and please read our anti-harassment policy. And if you have any questions, just throw it in the chat. Now, so today, as I said, we're here to celebrate these amazing people who have these incredible stories that are going to be, of course, within our panel, Kiss and Tell, stories of Latinis falling in love. So there will be lots of love and lots of conversation. We will kick it off first by going through everyone's wonderful bio, and we will start with Emery Lee. Emery Lee is the author and artist of Miku Diary and the forthcoming spring 2022 Café con Leche, whose love for chaotic and morally gray characters started at a young age. After graduating with a degree in creative writing, he's gone on to author novels, short stories, and webcomics across a variety of genres. When away from reading and writing, you'll most likely find him engaged in art or snuggling cute dogs. Now, Aaron Aceves is a bisexual Mexican-American writer born and raised in East LA. He graduated from Harvard College and received his MFA from Columbia University. His fiction has appeared in JMWW, Epiphany, and Them, among other places. He currently lives in Texas, where he serves as an early career provost fellow at the University of Texas Austin, and his debut novel, This Is Why They Hate Us, will be released, March 29th, 2022, from Simon & Schuster for young readers. Now we have, of course, last but not least, we have Gabriela Martins, is a Brazilian kidlit author and linguist. Her stories feature Brazilian characters finding themselves and finding love. She has also been a high school teacher and has worked as a TED Ed club facilitator where she helped teens develop the techniques to do TED Talks in the TED format. She edited and self-published a pro bono LGBTQ plus anthology, Keep the Faith, with all funds going to queer people in need. When she's not writing, she can be found also cuddling with two cats who may make an appearance, we don't know, or singing loudly and off key. Today we are going to be celebrating her novel, Like a Love Song. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited. We will soon unmute you and let you talk freely. This question is for everyone in the room. I want to know, and we'll start with Emery, is what do each of you think makes a great romantic story, and is that story different told through a Latinx lens?
So I mean, in my personal opinion, I feel like the most important thing in any romance is the characters, the dynamic between the characters, what brings them together, what is forcing them to, at least for the moment, not be together, and the way that they overcome that obstacle and that tension to like finally like bridge the gap and be with each other. And I don't think that like the rules of romance change when you're speaking about like writing through a Latinx lens. I think like culturally it doesn't really impact the consequences or like the urgency or like anything like that. But I do think that when culture comes into play and like identity comes into play, like it's always going to be a different story if you're telling it from like, you know, a Gringex lens versus like a Latinx lens. Like it's just naturally any element that you add into a story is going to change the way certain things transpire. So anything that impacts the characters, and usually identity is a pretty big part of a character's life and their experience and the way that they view the world, that's going to impact the way that the story comes about.
Aaron?
Yeah, I totally agree with Emery. I think it's the obstacles, right, that makes a good love story. The reason people always talk about Romeo and Juliet, or like, you know, in Selena's like Amor Prohibido, it's the fact that something is keeping two people apart. with the Latinx lens, I am always aware, like growing up, I was like, there's like the Latin lover. And I've never been like a suave guy. Like I've always been just like, I'm going to watch you from afar and pine over you, and I'm not going to do anything about it. So I write characters who are similar, where like some of the obstacles aren't society. I mean, they kind of are, because I write queer stories. And so like society is an obstacle, but it's also just this kid being super anxious and not really comfortable putting his feelings out there. So, and that's just something that I also kind of grew up with culturally. So yeah, I think it's the overcoming of those obstacles can make like just a really great love story.
Gabriela?
So I agree.
No, keep going. I'm sorry. We'll come back to you, Raquel. Go ahead, Gabriela.
So I agree 100% with Emery and with Aaron, but I think I am different from Aaron in the sense that I think I kind of fit the stereotype of the super passion Latinx lover. And so I guess what I'm trying to do with my books is to show that although there's some truth to those stereotypes, there's also a myriad of other things that impact relationships and how people behave romantically or sexually. So I love doing that because I'm Brazilian. Of course, I didn't grow up with a lot of the prejudice and just all of the horrible impact that being from an immigrant family can have on you from the outside, so I try to focus on the part that is my lane, if that makes sense. And I guess the most important part for me in a romance is banter. I really love to see how the characters interact. I think that it doesn't really matter so much the tropes. If they have this way of talking to each other, of going back and forth with chemistry, I think that jumps off the page. It doesn't matter if they are enemies to lovers or best friends to lovers or, any other trope. I love banter.
Also, we have Raquel Vasquez Gilliland. She is a Mexican-American poet, novelist, and painter. She received her MFA in poetry from the University of Alaska in Anchorage in 2017. She's most inspired by fog and seeds and the lineages of all things. When not writing, Raquel tells stories to her plants, and they sometimes tell stories back. She lives in Tennessee with her beloved family and mountains. And today we will be discussing her second novel, How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe, published by Simon & Schuster.
What makes a great romance is chemistry between the love interests. I can start a book and put it down if I don't sense that chemistry within their first interaction. And I think that's true in books because it's also true in life. At least for me, in my relationships, not just romantic, but in friendships, there has to be, like Gabriela was saying, banter and that back and forth and that energy. And for the Latinx version, or I'm trying to think now. So I think, like for Moon Fuentes, and for my life, I think we grew up a little bit more affectionate than some other cultures. So there's that some more tension with like physical affection. I remember growing up, when we meet relatives, you kiss them on the cheek to say hello, and not everyone does that. And for Moon Fuentes, there's also food. I feel like in my family and in my culture, our love is shown through delicious meals, and Santiago cooks for her as his love language, I guess. So maybe that's also a part of the Latinx romances. It can be centered on affection and also food. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you. um, that's fantastic because it shows how each of you kind of see what romance is, and and whether or not culturally, how does that play into the story or not? Are there cultural differences? And at the heart of it, what I think I'm hearing everybody say is there has to be chemistry. It's about the characters. That's what really kind of is fueling that story and what makes a romance, great. The other thing I would like to know from each of you is what do you think is important? Why do you think it's important, rather? Why do you think it's important to have Latinx romance stories for young readers? Why is that important? Emery, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so like when I think of romance, I think of like happily ever after, but also just like wish fulfillment and kind of this level of like joy. Like I think with a lot of genres, like there's always, I mean, with every genre, there's ups and downs. But I think romance is the one that gets its track record for really giving people those like happy, tender moments. It's that moment that feels like a warm hug where you're really validated in who you are and you're like given that moment of like, you're beautiful and like you're perfect the way you are and someone will love and appreciate you for that. And I think that especially when you're talking about marginalized readers and especially marginalized kids and teens, sometimes the real world doesn't ever give you that, or sometimes the way that you get it in the real world is not always accessible. And that can leave you really feeling isolated and alone. And so I think especially when it comes to a group that doesn't always get to see that in any form of media, also in like sometimes in real life, I think being able to pick up a book and be told like, you deserve a hug, you deserve someone who appreciates you for who you are. Like, I think that can really make a huge difference. And like, it can really help people feel like you're not alone and you actually have something to look forward to, as opposed to constantly being bombarded by these messages that you're not good enough.
Gabriela, what do you think?
I 100% agree with everything Emery said, but also I want to make a link with what Raquel said about how we may show our affection differently. So the first time I went to the United States, my cousin, who is American, he's Brazilian American. Emery's already laughing. You know what's coming, right? He took me to a party. Okay. And he was like, these are my friends. And I was like, okay, nice, fun. And then he left. He abandoned me in this group of strangers who were all American, and I had never met in person an American before. So naturally, as a Brazilian, I saw this girl, started talking to her, and then she introduced herself, said, I don't remember her name, but let's say, hi, I'm Amy. And I was like, hi, I'm Gabby. And she was horrified. She pushed me away by the shoulders and she said, I have a boyfriend. And I did not understand how these things were connected, but I said, good for you. And then eventually, after doing this a few more times, my cousin set me aside and said, we don't do that here. People are going to think you're harassing them. So I do think that, we are a little bit more physical with our affection. And I think that this can play a role. But also everything that Emery said was like, I think that we all want to be loved, and not necessarily romantically loved, but we all seek love. And very often in rom-coms, we get the fulfillment to this promise of love, not only romantically as well, because a rom-com where there are no other relationships except for the person the main character is romantically interested in, it's not a very good rom-com. There has to be other relationships. So I think that we and our readers, we get a lot of validation, like Emery said, that yes, we deserve this, we are loved, we are enough. And I think that's beautiful and necessary.
Erin, what do you think?
I think it's so important for young Latinx kids to just have hope and to see that, oh, that's a possibility for me, especially for queer Latinx kids, and also in in my book, Kike struggles with mental health issues, and like, again, like similar to like my life story. And so there's that feeling of like, I'm too difficult to love. I'm too heavy. I just, like that, that feeling of somehow being unworthy of it. And the character arc in that is like him realizing like, yeah, like, I can be loved. I can love. And I just think it's so important for kids to just be like, one day I can have something like that, or that's a possibility. It's funny, like sometimes I'm on a date with a guy, and even if it's not a good date, I'm just like, what would 13-year-old me think of this right now? Like, how he would just be like, you did what? Like, he would be so surprised by it. And I want kids to like have that feeling of, oh, maybe one day, if it hasn't already happened for them.
Raquel?
And the question was,
Yeah, why do you think it's important to have Latinx romance stories for young readers?
okay, I know that growing up, when I saw romance that featured a Latinx character, that Latinx character was usually like the rebound because the like main character was like, I'm going to find a Latin lover to have a love affair with, and then it didn't work out because there was just a shallow connection. And so I guess I grew up thinking on some level, in some way, that the only reason someone would want someone like me was because they find me exotic, they think I'm curvy, or what's the word, feisty, I guess, or whatever they would project
Spicy,
on
they
me.
say spicy.
Spicy. Yeah, and I definitely dated men who wanted me to behave that way. They wanted that ideal fulfilled. So I feel like these stories are important because we want to show that Latinx young people and older people too are deserving of fulfilling, lasting love. Not just the love affairs, which are good, but not the only thing that's out there for them.
So the next question is for you, Emery, specifically. National Book Award winner, Kason Chandler. I'm sorry. Let me try that one more time. I'm so sorry, everyone. Thank God we can edit this. National Book Award winner Kason Chandler describes Meet Cute Diary as the rom-com of my dreams. While it's a celebration of transgender and non-binary characters falling in love, it's also a story of living with authenticity and the influence of social media. Can you tell us about the novel's beginnings and its personal importance to you?
Yeah, so Miku Diary was a nano novel that I wrote back in 2018, and it was one of 2 nano novels that I wrote that year. And it was basically my, like, stop! Yes, don't laugh at me! It was basically like my recovery novel, because previously I had just written the most depressing novel I'd ever written in my life, and it was all about this kid, like, wandering at the end of the world trying to find his boyfriend, but knowing that he was dead. And so I wrote a rom-com to recover from the misery of that experience. And it was basically like, I felt like the first book was supposed to be like this exploration of like the inherent like desperation you feel as a kid growing up and feeling like you'll never find love, and then finding that person and losing them. And so with Miku Diary, it was all about taking this kid who he feels like he's too many things because he's triracial and he's trans, and he's gay, or he thinks he's gay, he's bi. And just kind of like him, he creates this whole blog and this whole world where he can explore his own happily ever after because he feels like he's not allowed to have one. And that was basically me as a kid feeling like I wasn't allowed to have a happy ending. So I said, I'm just going to write this whole book that's just going to be purely wish fulfillment. And I feel like I've gotten a lot of people like being like, oh, like this book is great to teach about XYZ thing. And I'm like, that's cool. That's not the point. I mean, don't get me wrong, like learn what you want from it. And I appreciate that. But it absolutely, the entire purpose of that book was wish fulfillment. It was just supposed to be so that kids like me could pick up one book, the only book I can think of that would be like, here you are, and like you can just be happy. Like, you don't have to sit here and suffer through, like, you know, the trauma of the real world. You can just pick up this one book, and for a moment, like, you, a triracial trans kid, will exist on the page being happy. And so that was honestly like the sole purpose of the book. And I feel like it has mostly fulfilled that purpose. So I'm happy with it.
I love that. I love that, though. I mean, you're saying just be happy, have happiness, celebrate. Wow, really? Two now, of course, I really want to know the other novel, though. Are you publishing the other novel, the one that was like walking the earth alone? Is that happening?
As of right now, no. It's been one of those books that you kind of like dance around for a while, trying to revise and find a place for it. So hopefully one day, but I don't have anything for it.
All right, that's where I was going. Fingers crossed. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, please, I want to see that book too. So Raquel, this question is going to be for you. Kirkus's starred review for How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe said, in addition to important sex-positive messages, the book sensitively explores grief, trauma, abuse, disability, and sisterhood, as well as the negative impacts of homophobia and purity culture. Can you tell us sort of the origin or beginnings of this story for you, and why the topics that are explored in the book, in this particular Latinx romantic literature book, why is this important? Tell us about this.
Sure. I wrote I wrote 30,000 words of a novel that on Nano, or National Art Novel, in November, whatever it stands for. And it was like a robot circus in historic Mexico. So Moon was like in the circus. Yeah. And and I wrote 30,000 words, and I was like, wow, this isn't working at all. And so I put it away. I chunked it. And I took a walk like a few weeks later, and I saw these two young women taking photographs of each other. And I looked at them and I was like, wow, those remind me so much of me and my sister when we were like teenagers. And then I started thinking, what would life have been like if I had come of age with social media? And that's what started. All of a sudden it's like, no, she's not in a robot circus. She's in a social media influencer tour across the states. And now she has a sister named Star. And what prompted some of the issues on like colorism, it's like when me and my sister grew up with our white passing cousins, and people just treated us so differently. And I just tried to imagine how that would echo in social media, how that would have influenced our self-esteems. So Moon is also bigger. She's fat. Her sister is thin, able-bodied, and is like the Western beauty ideal. And we also grew up with a lot of purity culture ideals. And that came in the book too. That's been like a huge topic that people want to talk to me about. They say, I wish I'd had this book when I was a teenager, because of addressing how messed up purity culture can be for young women, especially young women, but all young people really. So that was a really long list of stuff.
I know, but there is but it's really, it's true. I mean, all of those are a component of that story, and the way that you've like woven it in, and with sort of this, the magical realism. It's just such a beautiful, heartfelt story. And I'm one of those people for sure, among the other books that are here, but for sure, being someone growing up, that would have been a book for me too, and to write about a young woman who doesn't fit the quote, norm, whatever that is. And I think all of these stories are about looking at how do we portray our characters differently, right, than we would maybe have read when we were growing up. So Gabriela, you are now officially in the hot seat, but hopefully it's a warm seat of excitement and not uncomfortableness. Author Jennifer Dugan says, Like a Love Song is the perfect ode to falling in love while still finding your voice. The book does this through the influence of social media, challenges of fame, breakups, and of course, unexpected love. So, in what ways do you think young readers will identify with Natalie's journey in the book?
So for me, writing this book, although obviously I'm not famous, Natalie was very, her character was a love letter to teenage me, because I, like many other teenagers, but I think especially minority genders, marginalized genders, we struggle a lot to fit in boxes where we won't fit. And then we break ourselves to fit into these molds. And one example that I bring up from my years of being a teenager is that I used to like wax my body obsessively. And I don't mean like leg, groin, armpit. I mean like arm, like back of the neck. This is how obsessed I was with looking like a Barbie. Because if I didn't, then the mean girls in my school would call me a monkey, which was very common, unfortunately. So there were all these things. And still, I am coming from an extremely privileged position because of the color of my skin, because of my socioeconomical background, because I am mostly able-bodied. But even then, it was enough to make me struggle for many years with self-image and not see myself the way I actually look until I was an adult. So Natalie also struggles with that. The reason she goes by Natalie is because of forced assimilation. Her name is Natalia. She's a Brazilian, her nickname is Nachi. It's not Nat. And from her to get from point A to point B, it takes way shorter time than it took me, but still it takes her a while because she's so much smarter than me, But she understands that there's a place in the world for her. This is why I open the book with a dedication of, for everyone who didn't know they had a place in the world, you do. I see you. You belong. Because I believed I didn't have the right to be who I am for a very long time. And I think that this is a message that especially marginalized kids really have to be told over and over and over again until they internalize it. That, you are worth it and you are perfect the way you are, however way you are. And especially if you are from a marginalized gender, because the beauty ideals are so smothering. So I guess that's how I hope readers will identify with Nachi.
Wow, there is like a lot of passion in this panel. But I just love it because, when people think of romance, often they're thinking about ideas of maybe something light, and that there's not, but there is, even in the lightest parts of romance, there's so much heart, and it comes from a place that we've walked in different ways. And I think that we funnel into our characters, even though they're works of fiction, parts of our hearts and our dreams and our wish fulfillment, as Emery says, like all of those things are there. And I think that's really beautiful. Now, Aaron, it is all on you. Hope you're ready. Thank you. And so Aaron, Stonewall honor author Abdi Nazimian said, this book is as bold and urgent as its title in regards to This Is Why They Hate Us. What about the story of Enrique Luna and his summer goal in LA will feel both bold and urgent to young readers?
Well, first of all, I just want to say Abdi Nazimian is one of my favorite, Like a Love Story is one of my favorite YAs of all time. And he's very sweet to read the book and say that. The story of my title is like a very long one. Like I could talk about it for like half an hour. I'll just say this, like when my agent and I were working on edits, she said, this book is more To All the Boys I've Loved Before than it is The Hate You Give. So maybe we should reconsider a title, one without the word hate in it. And my response to that, and I think I had to get into this with my editor, but I knew she kind of like, she was like, okay, you can have your title. We're going to come back to this. Like, you're going to get back to that with your editor. And she's like, and I'll let them handle it. But the reason I pushed back on it and still I have my title is because I was kind of trying to get the message across that if you're a queer Latino boy and you fall in love with another boy, it's not going to be To All the Boys I Loved Before. It's not going to be that. I mean, I guess I could have written a book, where it's, there is no sort of conflict or obstacles in that way in terms of, racism and homophobia and biphobia and all that stuff. I guess I could have written that book, but I didn't. I wrote a book where it's not just sort of the outside hatred, but Enrique has a lot of internalized hatred. And I think that's one of the most insidious things about racism and any form of prejudice and homophobia. It's like, it's what they make us think of ourselves, not just what they think of us, right? And so I really wanted to just be like, yeah, I'm trying to do a cutesy thing. It's also like, I'm trying to, it's also kind of like a raunchy teen comedy, right? Like sometimes I'm like, it's like American Pie, but with a queer Latino teenager. Like, like he wants, to have sex and he wants to explore, other people in that way. But there's still that element of self-hatred and mental illness and all that stuff. So that's why I wanted the title that we thank God got to keep.
So I want to go a little bit off of that. For both you and Emery, Aaron, is that you're both writing, if we're going to talk within the spectrum, the LGBTQIA plus spectrum books. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the importance and excitement of being able to write to that specific lens, that specific kind of story? If it is exciting to you, I think it is. So if you could speak a little bit about that. Emery, will you take the lead?
Sure. I actually love this, I feel like the fact that this question is for Aaron and me, because I feel like we come from completely opposite angles at it. And I think that's actually I feel like that's really important, because I think people have this idea that oh, you're writing this story, so this is your goal. And it's like, no, it's not. That's not why I'm here. So for me, it's not really exciting. I actually dreaded the publication process for Miku Diary. Was a disaster. I hated it. I was so miserable the entire time. And it was largely because people wanted me to educate, and everyone thought the goal of the book was to enlighten people on the trans experience. And never once will I point to Miku Diary and say, this is the trans experience. It's not the trans experience. It's my kind of experience mixed a little bit with the experience I wish I had. And that's all it is. It's fun. It was and I think ultimately, every person, and I think people will be like, oh, well, what do queer people write for? And it's we write for the same things that other people write for. Okay. Being queer does not negate the fact that we're human. We are human first and foremost. I do not write books because I feel like it's my duty to explore transness on the page. I'm not here to change the world. I'm not here to combat transphobia or change the way that people perceive queer characters. I'm here because I like fiction. I like stories. I like telling stories, and I like telling stories to people who will enjoy the same types of stories that I enjoy. And for me, those are people who are like me. So that's queer people, and that's people of color, and that's disabled people. And so I write those stories, and my only I actually feel very sad when I think about Miku Diary, because it hurts me to think that it took until 2021 for this book to be out there in the world, because this book is not that special. It's only special in how unspecial it is. It is literally the same type of story that straight white authors have been telling for decades. And I was just the one who said, we're putting a triracial trans character into that story. And so I feel like, that is ultimately the biggest thing that I've had with this book, is I just feel like it was not supposed to be a big thing, and it only became a big thing because everybody else thought it was supposed to be a big thing. And now I have to explain why it's not.
Okay. Aaron, what is your thought to the question?
No, I feel the same way Emery does. We're like, yeah, like we're so different on like our approaches to writing and our books and stuff. And when we're on panels together, it's like, it's a great compliment. But I remember I went on a writing retreat in 2016. It was like a madcap writing retreat. And it was my first ever one. And DJ Older was talking. He was doing, I forgot what his workshop was on. But at one point, well, he was talking about, oh, you need to write real, and real, you know, when you're writing cross-culturally, like the realness comes from like, you know, I mean, he wasn't saying this exactly, I'm butchering what he was saying, but essentially he was saying like, oh, like there's going to be some aspect of the world and prejudice in your book if you're writing reality. And I raised my hand and I was like, what if I don't want to? And everyone laughed. They thought I was joking. And I'm like, no, like I'm serious. What if I don't want to write reality? What if I only want to write wish fulfillment, you know, kind of like just the good, like, you know, the good stuff. And then he was like, well, he's like, if you're being true to yourself, like, you know, if you're being true to the process, to the writing, some of that might seep in. It might not, but it, you know, like he was just basically saying like, don't close yourself off to that if you're going a certain direction. And when I was writing This Is Why They Hate Us, I set out to write a teen raunchy sex comedy. And, you know, it's this kid and he falls in love with everyone every 5 seconds because he's bi, and he's just like, oh, her, him, them. Like he's like, and I set out to write that, but I just couldn't. There were these moments, and it's so funny because I wrote chronologically, which I never do, but I wrote chronologically with this book. And it wasn't until, it was so funny editing with my agent because she's like, chapter 16 is the first time you mention that he has a mental illness. And I was like, right, because I was trying to just write like, you know, funny, raunchy stuff. And then like I got to the part where like, oh no, he'd hit a wall here, but we need to let the reader know sooner, right? So I don't know, I really like appreciate the chance to just sort of bare my soul on page, but also like have a dick joke like the next page and be like, this is the duality of man, the duality of people is like, yeah, we can be both.
Okay, fair enough. For everyone, before we get to our speed round questions, what kind of Latinx romance stories would you like to see more of for young readers? And we'll start with Raquel.
I think maybe all the tropes, first of all. I just would love to see all the tropes of Latinx characters by Latinx authors. I actually was asked a similar question on a different panel, and so this is what's coming up now. And like I struggle with intrusive thoughts, and it's actually been really difficult in some of my relationships because people are like, why can't you just know that this thought is just whatever? And it's like it's like an overcoming panic almost that comes with the thought. And I haven't like and it's not like, I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't encountered a young adult novel where the character is struggling with intrusive thoughts. And I've been wanting to write one, but I'm afraid it will make mine worse, which I really wouldn't like. But I would think that would be a really interesting and maybe healing story to see a character struggling with intrusive thoughts and starting and being in a romance with someone who is patient and kind about it. So,
okay, Gabriela.
More Brazilian stories. The fact that we had the first YA mainstream book in 2018 by a Brazilian, that's wild. So way more Brazilian stories, more Uruguayan stories, more Peruvian stories, more stories from Trinidad. You know, Latin America is so rich. Our cultures are so different. There's still a lot to explore. Publishing just needs to give the opportunity to new voices.
Aaron?
I mean, my original answer was like queer writers. I mean, obviously, I just want, you know, the entire alphabet just represented through a Latinx lens. But now I was thinking, and then I just, like, a genuine want came out of me when Gabriela was talking. I'm like, yeah, more international stories that just don't take place in the US. I love to travel. COVID ruined that. Hopefully not for much longer, but who knows? But I would love to just read about someone who grew up in, yeah, Brazil, but also, I'm just all the Latin American countries. The DR. Oh, I would love it. I would love, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess Elizabeth Acevedo does that with Clap a New Land, but just more of that. Yeah.
Emery.
Like, I feel like my answer to these types of questions is always like all of them. Like, I want every type of story that like Latinx authors can think about to like exist. And I don't want people to have to like question if their story is like worth telling and worth publishing. But I guess really like specifically, like I would love to see more characters with ADHD. And I feel like it's just like a condition that is extremely, extremely common. And yet you so rarely see it handled well in books, especially not in like romance and books that are like happy. And then I just also feel like in general, I'd love to see more stories that are just like not like stories that are steeped in identity, but are not about identity. Just more stories where like, the culture and like the way the person like views themselves and all that kind of stuff are like heavy elements of the story, but you could completely lay out the plot on paper without ever having to delve into what it means to be like blank identity.
Okay, fantastic. Now, if you feel comfortable, we're going to do quote unquote a speed round. This is for the young people who are watching so they can get a little sense of you, maybe some of you in how you were when you were younger. Okay. If you don't feel comfortable answering, you don't have to answer. You can just pass. You can just hold up your hand and say no. Okay. But they're pretty simple. We'll go ahead. And when I start, we'll go from the top of the screen. So we'll do Gabriela, Emery, and then Raquel, and then Aaron. Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Speed round question number 1, because this is called Kiss and Tell. Did any of you ever kiss and tell as a teenager? Gabriela, lead us.
All the time.
Emery, are you passing?
I never even kissed as a teenager.
Okay, then. Fair. Raquel?
I kissed, but I don't remember telling. I don't remember if I told.
My first real kiss, I was 19, so I got it just under the wire of being a teenager. And I told everyone about it because it was not a great experience. And I was like, is this normal? Like,
oh, I'm sorry. Question number 2. Which of these would be your teen self's dream date? Movie, party, or a kid's meal at Mickey D's? McDonald's, Gabriela.
Yeah, I was like, what?
What's a Mickey D?
As a teenager, it would be a party because then I could.
Okay, this is code, and we're gonna just let you have that. Emery, do you want to jump in?
I would not want to date anyone who invited me to any of those things. I would not date you if you invited me to any of those.
Okay, legit. Raquel?
I used to go to movies a lot, and I guess I like that. Okay. I don't know. They don't really appeal that.
Totally fine. Aaron?
I don't think I would do a party because I didn't like to dance as a teenager. And then I did the McDonald's thing. I like that, but I think like movie actually would be my answer. Okay. Just like I like the tension of like the armrest, right? Like that, like that whole thing. And I love seeing movies and then talking about them afterwards. So like movie, yeah.
And the arm goes over, yeah. Question number 3: as a teen, who would have been your celebrity crush if you feel like answering? Gabriela?
I had so many crushes. I was really into Megan Fox because of Transformers. But I was into like literally every person who played any instrument ever also. So okay,
that works. All of those people work.
With a soul.
With a soul. Okay, just the people with souls though. So if they were souls, they were out.
I feel like as a bisexual person and teen, I liked everything with a shadow.
Okay. Emery, did you have any celebrity crushes?
I feel like Gabby and I actually talked about like our like weird taste in like skinny men. But like I was literally like into like all the emo band guys, Martin Johnson, Brendan Urie, Andy Biersack. I was into all of them. And then later in my teen years, I was into like every redhead woman. So like Karen Gillan, Kat McNamara, like all of that.
Okay. Raquel?
I feel really old saying this, but JTT
No,
was
I
like the
remember
love of my
JTT.
life.
I
I was gonna
remember
marry
that.
him. When I was little, I was gonna marry him.
Oh, Aaron?
When I was a teenager, redheads. So Lindsay Lohan, I remember I was obsessed with her from the time I was like young. I was just like, she's so beautiful. And then I was also, so at the time I was repressing that I was into guys. But like looking back, you know, when you're like, oh, that was pretty not
Mhm.
straight of you. But it probably would have been like Chris Evans in Fantastic Four.
Oh,
That was pivotal. Yeah.
Fantastic Four. Good one. What was your favorite romantic song as a teen, Gabriela?
My favorite band was Taking Back Sunday, so all of my favorite love songs were extremely passive aggressive.
Emery?
I feel like my answer is similar, but I'm trying to think because I feel like most of my favorite songs were like super emo. But Lyra was like, I mean, I feel like the only like really romantic artist I liked as a teen was Taylor Swift. So I was super into like Fearless, like Speak Now, that like era. But then I was also like super into like there was this song by like Black Veil Brides that was super emo and like depressing, and it was just like a whole bunch of like weird references, and it was called The Mortician's Daughter, and I was obsessed with it, but it was technically a love song. So
I remember that. Oh my God, I haven't heard that in a minute.
I just want to add that what was written on my notebook, my school notebook, was the lyrics to Taking Back Sunday song, and it says, and I have never felt that way about anyone, thank God, but it said, the truth is you could slit my throat, and with my one last dying breath, I would apologize for bleeding on your shirt. So that's the kind of music.
Okay, you just reminded me though. There was this one song that I used to love, and I remember the lyric was like, "If looks could kill, I would die happy knowing that it was you." And like that song took me out. Like it was so good. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, emo song.
Okay, Raquel, what do you have to break this up here?
I used to love, well, I still love her, Mariah Carey. I love fantasy and Always Be My Baby. I listen to those on repeat.
Aaron?
Fantasy is such a good song. Mine similar to Emery. Sparks Fly specifically on Speak Now by Taylor Swift, and then anything Coldplay. So like Yellow, Scientist.
Oh yeah,
Fix You.
Those are good. Those are so good because it's so full of sadness. But yet there's romance to it. What were your favorite romantic books or movies as a teen? A book or movie as a teen that you liked, Gabriela?
Dabs changed my life. It's Sapphic Spice, and the villain / love interest is a Brazilian.
Okay.
My favorite movie was the Titanic, but I only liked the part where everybody died.
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know why, but I had a feeling. Raquel, what was a movie or book that you enjoyed as a teen that was romantic?
I don't really remember. I remember watching movies with my mom, like novellas and stuff. Maybe that was it. I don't remember. Sorry, I can't remember anything
It's
specific
really
for
okay.
this one. Okay.
It's okay. Aaron?
I read the entire Twilight series to impress a girl I liked, but I ended up liking them and seeing the movies. So,
what would be your favorite romantic book that you've read now as an adult that you didn't write?
I read this year Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney, and it was one of the best books I've ever read.
Okay. Emery?
I feel like my go-tos are What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. And I'll be honest, like a love song, I love this book. It's so good.
Raquel, is there something that you enjoy?
Okay, my comfort novel is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I read it over and over and over and over. I love it.
Aaron?
I just read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, and it hit me like a truck. It coincides perfectly with like something I'm going through right now, and I'm just like reading it. What was the worst time and the best time? It was, yeah.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start moving through to the kids' questions. So you've had some young people. You have Maya W. She is in 7th grade. She lives in Pennsylvania, and she would like to know, how do you get your ideas for your characters? Go, Aaron, lead us.
I always say I write characters who are just me with one attribute very much played up. Kike is just me if I were Gen Z, I think.
Raquel?
Um, this is hard because ideas just come and I don't know where they come from. But I like characters to have a passion. So when I develop characters, I try to think about what are they passionate about, what do they want to spend their time doing. Yeah.
Gabriela?
I always start with a trope or an idea for a story, and then I develop the characters from that. What kind of character does that story need?
Emery?
My characters are usually either an attribute of myself that I suddenly realize I need to explore, and then I build a character out of that. Or it's an attribute that I saw in a different fictional character that I really want to play with, and then I'll develop the character from there.
Fantastic. The next question we are going to play is from Andre C., 9th grade in Oklahoma.
If you could be a character from your own book, which one would you be?
So, if you could be a character from your own book, which one would you be? Aaron.
Well, thank you for that question, Andre. I love seeing the kids. His name is Tyler Montana. He's a white boy who's too into hip hop. And at one point, he says the line, "My parents are dragging me to Barbados." And I would love to be dragged to Barbados. So,
Anyone else want to take this question?
I feel like I'm basically Brenda, one of my side characters, who is very panicky and loves sweatshirts. But I'm probably like, I wish I could be her girlfriend because her girlfriend's like so cool. So the cool character that I'm definitely not.
Emery?
I'm like a combination of Devin and Noah. But the thing is, like, I wouldn't want to be Devin because our life sucked. So I guess I would be Brian because I feel like he had it the easiest.
Raquel?
I loved being Moon. She has such a beautiful transformation. But for I guess an adult character, being her Thea would be really cool. She lives by herself in New Orleans and makes her own ice cream, and I don't know, it just sounds fun.
Okay, we have another question. This one is from Diana S., 7th grade in Massachusetts. She would like to know, how did you get into writing books? Gabriela?
The short answer is I couldn't not have done this. I have always told stories, and at some point I found out you could earn a living with that.
Emery?
For me, it was basically that, like, I didn't want my favorite stories to end, so I had to keep them going. And then one day someone told me that I was actually really good at it and I should make a career out of it. So now I'm here.
Raquel?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had thought I had muted myself and I didn't. From reading everything and reading books, lots and lots and lots of books. I started writing my own when I was little.
Aaron?
pretty much the same as Raquel. Like, I just loved reading so much, and I was such a control freak. I wanted to start writing my own books. So I tried when I was 9, and I failed. But
All right. Well, that brings us to an end of this panel of Kiss and Tell. And I want to thank everyone who is here, who has shared their thoughts and their inspirations for their books. And I want to thank all the viewers who are watching. In the meantime, let's celebrate Latinx books and have a wonderful day.